Congressman Juan Ciscomani. Congressman, welcome back.
Thank you, Mike. Always happy to be on.
I want to start with where we kind of ended the last time we talked. Has there been any discussion on Capitol Hill in the House or between the House and the Senate on the furthering of some piece of legislation based on the work that was done on that Senate legislation and moving something forward, or is this a totally dead issue?
No, it's not a dead issue. Definitely not for the House. What we're starting to do here is, of course, we passed a big piece of legislation, the border security bill, last year. You've heard me talk about this several times. And then there was this effort on the Senate to come to some kind of bipartisan agreement on this. Also, last time I was on with you, we discussed how that bill fell short, and it just didn't get to where it needed to get to. Actually, it made things matter worse in a lot of ways. So I wasn't able to get behind that bill. Now, it never made it to the House, so we never had the opportunity to amend it, work on it, things that I would have been interested to do, because we do need to do something. So as the efforts keep on going in typical Washington fashion of tackling this issue in a broad way, which is in my calculation, one of the most frustrating things about Washington. You can't just deal with issues individually. There's always has to be this big package where you add on so many other things that ends up diluting the original purpose of what you wanted to do. So we need to deal with the border security piece on its own. And that is what we did in H.R. 2, like I said, the border security bill last year. So instead of trying to tackle even within border security a bigger spectrum, we are passing aspects of H.R. 2 individually, hoping that these kind of things can make it through. Some of my bills have made it through, and we're going to keep on pressing on that. Increasing penalties for fleeing federal law enforcement, or things of that nature that would do that. Hopefully, we could get things on that end catch and release that actually have a real impact on this, to rebuild the wall, to continue building the wall, renew that effort. These are the kind of things that I think would actually have a key impact.
And one of the frustration as a citizen, and I'm sure you've heard this from many people, is that a lot of these things are dealing with people that are already here. What the American people seem to be clamoring for is better border security so that we're not allowing people in that don't belong in, that we have a better vetting process and we have a more strict border security policy. Is there something in the works that would actually do that?
1,000%. You're correct, Mike, on that. I mean, you said it perfectly. That was one of my biggest issues with the Senate bill, which had over $1 billion. And now we've got members actually asking for 3 times that for transportation, for housing, for shelter of migrants, and 0 for anything on building the wall, for example, or funding efforts at the border. My whole point here has been you can throw all the money that you want at this problem, but if you keep transporting everyone and sheltering as many migrants as come in, that's just an open invitation. You are going to keep feeding the beast. The efforts right now need to be going to the border. And in many cases, it's not a funding issue. I mean, they'll always take more funding, more agents, but the average time between an agent of them getting hired and being on the field is about 23 months. So it's not an immediate effort on putting these resources there, and then you get the result immediately. What we could do very quickly here is the president could end catch and release now. He could end the exploitation of parole authority. He could reinstate remain in Mexico. Remain in Mexico alone. Border Patrol tells us that would decrease the entries by over 70%. That one measure alone. If you had to choose one, that's the one that I would choose. Expand the expedited removal authority and renewing the wall, the building of the wall. These 5 things I've been talking about, because the president can do them today. He won't. Right. So he's putting it on Congress and saying, pass legislation. Well, the crisis wasn't created due to legislation. The crisis was created because no laws have changed from the moment that Biden came in to now. And look at the crisis. He changed all this by doing away with these measures that I just mentioned. So he could actually implement these today and stop the flow immediately. Legislation will always be slow. We're working on this. Like I said, I've got that bill that passed through the House on bipartisan basis of increasing penalties for individuals that are transporting migrants through, which the majority are U.S. citizens, by the way. And we've got other bills another one that creates image technician positions within CBP to be able to identify drugs coming through. Again, pieces of this. But the immediate action that needs to be taken is from the president. in this executive order fashion. Now, long term, Mike, we need to codify these into law. That's why we can't be just depending on whoever's in the White House to be ruling by executive order. Trump did it because he didn't have the support of Congress, and Biden did it because that's what he wanted to do. So we need to codify these things into law once and for all, and that's what we're working on.
Congressman Juan Ciscomani is joining us from Southern Arizona, Arizona 6th District. I want to ask you one more thing on the federal level, then something on the state level. But there's stories out there about scanners that are being used to find drugs at the ports of entry that are sitting unused because the funding isn't there for the installing and for the manning of those machines. Is that accurate? And if it is accurate, what can be done to get those things up and running to slow down the drugs into America?
Yes. I mean, when you look at, even if you cross the border, you go to Mexico, you even see some lanes not open. And that's one of the most frustrating parts. The infrastructure is there, the lanes could be open, but the personnel isn't there. That's what I mean by increasing the hiring and giving more funding for these positions. The bill that I introduced, the Best Facilitation Act, that's what it's called, it creates an image technician position because they don't have them. So the technology is there, but the training for the agents hasn't been there. So my bill would address that in funding fashion, as well as an appropriator myself, that we can put resources into that. That would actually open up more lanes and also be able to use the full technology that is available that we have.
So why is there a holdup on that? Is this part of that? It becomes bigger than what it is originally intended? Why isn't that something that everybody's on board with? That the technology is there, let's get people trained and let's get to work.
That's exactly my point. That's why we introduced this. Why the government does certain things in this administration, I'll never be able to answer these things. I've been here for a little over a year, and frustration is falls short of some of the inefficiencies that I see out there. Here's the bottom line, Mike. We have as a country both the ability and the resources to stop this crisis in so many ways. The technology, like we mentioned here, the laws that are in the books that we could enforce, all this is there. However, it falls mainly on the executive branch, on the president and Mayorkas to enforce this. That's what we ended up impeaching Mayorkas, because he has not done any of the things that he needs to do to actually do his job. And that happened for the first time, in the history of our country of a sitting, secretary of being impeached, especially of Homeland Security. So this falls on the president. That's what we are calling him to do these things as we move legislation forward. So to not, put it all on the trust on him to get it done, that's why I introduced this bill about the facilitation of the new CBP position.
All right. The last question is a two-part question. One is with the laws that have been enacted in Texas and the way that Texas is using its state resources and other resources to stop the flow as much as they can into Texas, are we going to see and are we seeing an increase of crossers in Arizona? And the second part of the question is, if that is the case, what do you think of the Arizona legislature trying to pass state laws here to do a lot of what they're doing in Texas?
The answer to the first question is yes, we are seeing that. The Tucson sector, which is not only Tucson, obviously, it's a whole southern part of the state of Arizona in terms of a border patrol sector, is the busiest sector. Since December, it started happening when Texas tightened down their own involvement, and Abbott stepped up and used state resources for that. We've seen an increase in traffic through the Tucson sector. No question about that. The numbers are there, and we're seeing that. Now, in terms of what the state could and should do, now remember, I spent 8 years working with Governor Ducey and his administration. And when we started, we were so President Obama was in the White House, and then President Trump, and then President Biden. So we went through 3 different presidents in our time in office at the governor's office, and we saw the different response to the border. And the border is a federal issue. We always said it. I'm saying it now, and we'll always say that. However, there's a role that states can also play, and that's the role that we stepped up to play at the state of Arizona when both Obama and Biden were not helping us protect the border, from funding resources to special police force to deploying the National Guard to the border. These are all things that the state can and should do in these kind of cases. So that's what we did, and that's what it's available to be done today as well.
Well, Congressman, I always appreciate your candor on this topic and your expertise in this as well. And I look forward to talking to you again on this issue and hopefully better news on things moving forward and getting things done.
That's right, Mike. Thanks a lot. And hopefully next time in person, too. I'll see you soon.
Yeah, I would love that. I'd love that very much. Thanks, Congressman. That's Congressman Juan Ciscomani spending a few moments with us.
Thanks for watching the Mike Broomhead Show. Tap to watch the first season of Amazing Arizonans, a KTAR News podcast. You can also click the button in the middle to subscribe.